has a tendency to create burn-ins, this might be a problem. Are the smallest 4K OLED displays in existence today? Toss it to me. When there are too many explosions right in front of you, like here. And of course I had to test it, and this is what Asus looks like versus LG OLED. And you are always better switching it off if you are not gaming. They may even void your warranty. If you ask me, this experience is so not worth it when you spend this much money on a monitor.
Roman does consumer tips.
Today we're looking at two 42-inch 4K OLED gaming monitors for gaming and productivity tasks. Rather than just drooling at tech specs, we will look at it from a perspective of a daily user like you and I, someone who does at least 50-50 split for work and gaming on this monitor. Along the way, I'll also include some comparison to the latest 42-inch LG OLED Flex. And though I don't have the actual LG OLED Flex in my studio, it's practically the same monitor as my main cast for today's video. But let me quickly introduce myself. If this is the first time we meet, my name is Roman and welcome to my channel. So let's say you decided to pull a trigger and invest in some quality 4K OLED monitor for gaming and productivity use. There are quite a few choices for 4K monitors, but not so many for OLED. With OLED, size matters, and let me tell you straight ahead, 48 or 55-inch is too big for productivity. Trust me, I tested it. Link in the description up here somewhere. Hence, if you're after OLED for productivity and specifically 4K, you will end up with one of these. Toss it to me. No, I'm kidding. It's either 42-inch OLED Asus ROG PG42UQ, one of these guys, or simply LG OLED EVO 42-inch TV as a desktop monitor. And why these two, you will say? Because these are the smallest 4K OLED displays in existence today. There's also one more variation of this display recently released, and it's called LG OLED Flex. I already mentioned it in the beginning. It's the very same 42-inch C2 OLED display with the ability to bend it when you want to or make it flat. Some of you as well will argue in the comment sections that LG has just recently released a dedicated curved and flat Ultra Gear OLED gaming monitors, blah blah blah. Well, read the specs. Those monitors are 2K resolution. Yes, they do utilize a OLED technology and provide super fast refresh rate, but they're 2K. And as many of you like to use consoles at a desk, this might be a problem. Now back to the monitors we have. I spent a total of 30 days with these beauties, trying to understand which one I would keep, and I'll share my findings with you throughout this video, so stay tuned. In terms of display hardware specifications, these monitors are identical twins. Asus is using the exact same 42-inch OLED panel made by LG Display Company, a side business of LG, making displays for others, and themselves of course. This means brightness, contrast, colors, text clarity, you name it, all are the same, regardless of what each box says. And so is PPI, pixel per inch density, which is 106 for both. LG OLED Flex also has got 106 PPI, another proof that it's the same display. Now, since we mentioned PPI, it's believed that an ideal pixel density for a desktop use has to be above 100 pixels per inch. This is why 42-inch OLED is a big deal, since it's the first 4K OLED with more than 100 pixels per inch. More pixels means sharper and more defined details. This is why when you come closer to your standard TV, image becomes fuzzy, but you don't notice it from your couch, since at a certain distance, pixel density becomes less noticeable by your eyes. I also noticed absolutely no difference when it comes to text clarity, though Asus claims that their monitor provides better text clarity. No idea what that's all about, but decide it for yourself. At the end of the day, it's the same OLED display. Period. The refresh rate is pretty standard on both panels. It's 120 Hz at 4K resolution, but Asus allows to overclock it up to 138 Hz. So far, visually, I haven't seen any significant difference in gameplay at 138 Hz, but for some people it matters. And if you're after super fast refresh rate and 4K gaming, then consider smashing those like and subscribe buttons below to be notified, as I will be shortly releasing a video about one and only 240 Hz 4K curved gaming monitor. And this is none the other but 32-inch Samsung Odyssey G8 Neo. And right next to it, if you notice, this is a 34-inch Alienware with QD OLED panel by Samsung. We'll discuss it in that video as well. Now, what makes the monitors we're looking at today to be priced so differently? Well, let me explain. One is a TV and another one is a gaming TV. And gaming means expensive. And on top of that, features each provides. Also, Asus version is intentionally made as a computer monitor, hence the port accessibility is better, well, somewhat. It also has a convenient USB hub featured with USB Type-A ports located at the top, bottom, and the back. It even has this 1/4-inch thread right at the top center point of the monitor to mount your lights, cameras, and it's super convenient if you plan on streaming from it. And since it's designed as a gaming monitor, Asus also claims that it has a better cooling system and runs cooler than the competitors. And by saying that, they're just hinting at LG's OLED C2. And of course I had to test it, and this is what Asus looks like versus LG OLED 42-inch after playing Borderlands 3 at ultra settings and HDR for 30 minutes. I personally feel like LG has a better setup with firmware, as updates are released on a regular basis and installed automatically over Wi-Fi. Don't forget, LG C2 is still a TV. While on Asus, well, it's complicated. Let me explain. You have to download the drivers, installation software, have your monitor connected to your PC with original cables. Basically, it's a mess. And on top of that, updates are not as frequent as LG releases them for TVs. As a result, Asus has a consistent backlog of fixes it needs. And taking into account that this is a highly overpriced monitor, it is not a mass market item. That's why I can understand why Asus is behind on their updates. It's just not on their priority list. And you would have to deal with that. And here are some examples where Asus firmware struggles when compared to LG OLED C2. First and most important is HDR. If you don't care about HDR, you don't need an OLED monitor and you can skip this entire video. Still here? Exactly as I thought. HDR is the best with OLED, but Asus struggles with HDR when in productivity mode. And you are always better switching it off if you are not gaming. Otherwise, your windows and apps will act differently from one another, all depending on the background colors of pages you look at or apps. You will end up with consistent brightness struggle when switching windows unless you turn off HDR every time you exit games. And this is what it looks like. All of a sudden, pages you work on will get dark, while when switching to other windows will burn out your eyes with high brightness. And of course, there are ways to improve it if you want to keep HDR on. Some of it achieved by disabling OLED care parameters. Honestly speaking, I could not resolve it without turning off HDR entirely and applying uniform brightness setting in HDR mode. Luckily, Windows has a shortcut now for turning on or off HDR without going into settings every single time. Basically speaking, and as many people online complain, this is a firmware issue and it needs to be fixed. And also, why would you want to turn off safety settings that keep your OLED panel intact in the first place? This should be on at all times, and I suggest them keeping that way. In fact, if you look at LG, they forbid tweaking this in the hidden factory menus of their TVs. And that must be for a reason. Otherwise, they may even void your warranty. And you don't want that. Additionally, I noticed HDR feature sometimes struggles with dark scenes, when there are too many explosions right in front of you, like here. So when you are in a dark room and blasting away, entire screen may start flickering and go dark as it struggles to control the brightness around you. Yet, I only had this happen to me once, and since then I wasn't able to replicate it on camera. Surprisingly, despite being a TV, LG C2 handles this pretty well, regardless of HDR being on or off, and regardless of when it comes to gaming or productivity. And by the way, if you're looking for a gaming chair, make sure to check out these guys. This is Cybart. On my channel, you'll find a comparison of Cybart versus Secret Lab, Alienware/Vertigear, and Noble chairs. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. Link in the description. And since we're talking about HDR, let's switch to color accuracy. Despite Asus's claim that this monitor is calibrated at the factory, colors are awful straight out of the box. By default, all colors are dull, lifeless, and with a bluish tint in some cases. You will need to spend some time adjusting and tweaking different color settings on this monitor and your video card output. Without it, you won't be able to achieve somewhat correct colors, at least in productivity mode. In fact, I ended up buying specifically for this monitor a OLED-compatible display calibrator, which was not that easy to use for beginners, but after about 10 or so attempts and hours of time wasted, I think I finally managed to bring this monitor to where it needs to be. If you ask me, this experience is so not worth it when you spend this much money on a monitor. In my opinion, it has to be perfect straight out of the box, no ifs or buts. As you guessed, LG C2 has way better color accuracy straight out of the box. And with all of their built-in AI features, you can only further improve it from there. And of course I did hook up my calibrator to it, since I now own one, thanks to Asus. Turns out, most of the settings on LG OLED are pretty good and needed a little tweak here and there to make it even crispier, specifically for computer use. And speaking of adjustments, Asus has no adjustments whatsoever if you have HDR on. The only parameter that you can change is the brightness, while in SDR mode, on the other hand, it's better as now you are able to tweak it. But using this monitor at this price point in SDR mode 100% of the time, it's unreasonable in my books. And again, as you guessed, LG C2 allows for multiple adjustments with HDR on or off. Another win for C2. My last observation where Asus firmware fails is switching from full screen to a desktop or waking up. Every other time you will get a completely black screen for up to 10 minutes. The reason for this is a pixel cleaning program in the background. Basically, this monitor has a feature that after a certain amount of time, it will try to do a so-called pixel refresh procedure to prevent OLED burn-ins that everybody is so afraid of. And it's doing it when you are switching off your monitor or putting your computer to sleep, which is a good feature to have. However, they should have installed a background timer to identify when you are switching off the screen completely or simply switching between full screen applications. Otherwise, once I forgot to change sound output for my game, and while I was switching to desktop view to change it, and going back to game, it started cleaning and took 10 minutes. 10 minutes of black screen, a complete mood killer before gaming. There is a way to speed it up by turning your monitor off and on again, but Asus doesn't recommend doing this. So it's up to you. Well, probably some of you at this point will be like, Roman, you're just crapping on Asus here, it's not that bad. I'm just sharing my 30 days journey between these two monitors. Trust me, I'm not taking sides, perhaps asking for too much in some cases. Yes, but at this price point, why not? And next on my list are the most favorite by everyone, burn-ins. Displays are the same and have identical features to protect your OLED. There are pixel shifting, pixel cleaning, etc. But what I noticed is that Asus has a tendency to create burn-ins when it's being woken up from sleep or just being turned on. It somehow captures the very first bright images it gets. Here's an example of burn-in images from the Asus logo. But don't you worry, these fade away pretty quick. Yet somehow I don't observe this behavior on LG. Other than this, there are no burn-ins everyone is so scared of. And let's be honest, OLED technology is not what it was 10 years ago, when it was just released. As long as you don't disable protective features, you should be good. And LG in fact claims that lifespan of their display panels is around 30 years. Trust me, you will not be using this monitor for 30 years. Now another favorite point of debate, reflections. When it comes to computer use, I'm pro matte screen for computer monitors, period. This is where Asus has a significant advantage in my eyes and for my eyes, literally. However, LG turned out to be not so bad with its glossy monitor, even during sunny days. And despite sunny side window to the right of my monitor, reflections were not an issue, at least it didn't bug me at any point. And don't forget, there are settings for LG screen to adjust brightness according to your room condition. If you turn on that function, you are set. Overall, in my experience, bright rooms are not an issue for C2, and of course a piece of cake for Asus as well, with its matte finish. If you have a direct light source behind you, however, well then Asus may be a better choice. But there is also a debate that direct sunlight may destroy your OLED pixels a lot faster than what they intentionally designed to live to. I also want to talk about size, since it's a pretty big deal here, and positioning of these monitors on your desk. Many of us have a dual monitor or ultra-wide setups already, so we are used to a lot of real estate on our desk. This experience somehow is different with a 42-inch 16:9 display. And in this scenario, deep desk is a must because you have more area to cover with your eyes. This may not be as feasible in gaming, but in productivity mode, it does create strain for your eyes and your neck. Yet, depending on your magnification settings, you are able to put up to 4 windows on the screen and use them just fine side by side. Again, thanks for the 42-inch real estate. And for best result, I suggest getting a monitor arm, as this way you are able to position it right at the edge of your desk. And of course, now you have more space freed up under the monitor, plus you will be able to better adjust it to your eye level. I ended up placing it slightly higher than what original stand would allow me. So when selecting a monitor arm, Asus apparently is heavier than C2, and I guess it's something to do with that better cooling. But anyhow, as long as your arm is able to lift more than 20 kilos or 40 pounds, you should be set. There are plenty of choices on Amazon for under $100. And if you want to go for something fancier when you're picking your monitor arm, you can grab one of their Ergotrons, but that's gonna cost you. I'll leave some links in the description for you to pick from. But there is a slight problem when it comes to monitor arm and Asus. See, LG has made a standard 300 by 200 VESA mount at the back of their TV. And it's a pretty standard adapter plate that gets attached to your monitor arm from 100 by 100 VESA to 300 by 200. Very easy to find, and it's a piece of cake. With Asus, they decided to be different over here as well and made it 300 by 300. The problem is there are no adapters easily available from 100 by 100 to 300 by 300 VESA. So I ended up with this Frankenstein of an arm mount made of 2 adapters. Not a big deal at the end, but a headache to figure it out. If you're curious, I will leave some links in the description for the parts. Having a monitor arm also allows you to tilt and turn your monitor, which is crucial here, because it gives you access to the back of it. Without an arm, it's damn impossible to get to the back, since neither Asus or LG provided stands allow for any turning whatsoever. And that right there is a recipe for disaster, especially if you don't have easy access at the back of your monitor. This is where the latest LG Flex bothers me the most, since it has this fixed stand. I think it makes it impossible for a day-to-day use, even with a deep desk setup like mine, as I think best distance from the monitor is around 3 feet or 1 meter. Next on my list is sound. Since this is a TV turned into a monitor, both models have built-in speakers. However, LG C2 has Dolby Atmos and further AI improvement for the sound. As a result, LG C2 sounds better overall than Asus. But in any case, you can get rid of those speakers from your desk. They're history now. Aspect ratio and scaling. Unlike in my previous test of Ultra Gear 48-inch, it's not great on Asus, and you cannot stretch it like with LG C2. Though both look pixelated and I would not use it for gaming, but you just have it there. So far, if you ask me, this function looked best on LG's Ultra Gear 48-inch, and that's despite having less pixels per inch. I think it was at 92 or so. In that specific scenario, it was a great alternative for having a ultra-wide on your desk when needed. But for some reason, both C2 and Asus don't do a great job with video quality output, and it looks silly on Asus even more. So which one is better, and which one should you choose if you are stuck between two? I think we will see further improvements in the size segment, and I would not sell your kidney for an Asus just yet, especially if you cannot afford it. 22, 42-inch LG C2 will cost you brand new $800 to $900 on sale. And they drop the price very frequently, while Asus doesn't change the price, to say at all, and will cost you around $1,400 US. $600 of difference can be easily spent elsewhere. I even saw a 42-inch C2 open box deal from Best Buy this day for less than $800. I think it was like in the range of $650 or $700. Insane deal when you compare it to Asus or the latest OLED Flex. I mean, even the name says it. It's made for flexing at a whopping $3,000 US, though they dropped it to $2,500 immediately after releasing it. I guess the sales were shy. And since all these monitors use the same hardware, I think the choice is quite obvious. I'm going with LG C2 for the time being until we have a better OLED with faster refresh rate in 4K and better pixel density, ideally in 120 to 130 pixels per square inch. And since we already started getting OLED monitors with 240 Hz refresh rate, though in 2K, I think it's just a matter of time, maybe a year or so. And one last comparison. This is remote control for LG OLED, and this is a remote control for Asus. Tiny and very convenient. But since I already mentioned that I'm going with C2 for my setup, what I will be doing, I will order LG's Ultra Gear controller directly from LG spare parts. By buying this beautiful controller, I will be able to get rid of this guy and keep one handy on my desk at all times. Plus, with LG's game-centric menus, it will work flawlessly because they're identical to what Ultra Gear has. And even with this additional completely unnecessary option, but very cool one, you still will be saving $500 when compared to Asus Swift OLED. Now, would I ever buy OLED Flex? I think I would not. Issue here is its key feature, the moving components. I don't think you'll bend it often enough to justify the price gap, first of all. And with moving parts, there are always breakdowns, same as with your car. Eventually something will break. And here's a quick screenshot of such proof from Best Buy. Bear in mind, these monitors just came out and they are already failing. Would you want to deal with a monitor that got stuck in an uneven position, let's say a year or just after your warranty has expired? I wouldn't. In my humble opinion, this is more of a marketing gimmick to maintain brand attention and further expand into the gaming market. Because again, gaming means expensive. And of course, don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. Tell me in the comments as well, what would be an ideal monitor for your setup? Did I miss anything? What GPU are you running and what monitor are you considering? If 42-inch is not big enough for you, consider checking out my review of 48-inch Ultra Gear OLED monitor right here. And if you want faster refresh rate, you'll see a link to Samsung G8 somewhere here as well, G8 Neo, once the video is out. And on this note, I'll see you in my next video. Godspeed!